Late night host Jimmy Kimmel is back on the air after taking the summer off. He's missed a lot. Kimmel says if you're not vaccinated, you shouldn't get a hospital ICU bed. But I'm not sure if Jimmy was being sincere because he wasn't crying. Anyway, it's just funny hearing someone say, "I see you," who nobody actually sees. Look, I don't want to suggest that Kimmel's show has become boring and predictable, but last night during the taping, people in the studio audience were changing the channel.
Late night television, once alive with the sound of real laughter, now feels strangely quiet, almost uneasy, as a noticeable tension hangs in the air and hints that something has shifted and the balance of power is changing. And on this new stage, a surprising figure steps forward, not with force or spectacle, but with a smirk and a microphone, ready to challenge how things have always been.
The worst part about this whole thing is that his presidency is ripe for mockery and ridicule and even gentle humor if you like him. I mean, just Hunter Biden alone, just in the recent stuff, I mean, you could go on forever. But Kimmel has abdicated his role of a comedian. He's now just a political hack. Which I'm grateful for, because then I get the turf to myself. I'm not a comedian, but I just filled the gap. That's why I'm beating him every night, because he sat there with that guy and basically he spoon-fed him like he was a dementia patient at a rest.
This new shift puts one of late night's former kings squarely in the spotlight, looking less like a ruler and more like a leftover from another time, when raw, sharp-edged mockery slams straight into Hollywood's carefully scripted feel-good routine. Sparks are bound to fly. What comes out of that clash could change late-night comedy for good. And right now, Gutfeld is leading the charge, launching a full-on comedic siege against Jimmy Kimmel, picking apart not just the jokes, but the relevance behind them.
Kimmel actually said in that thing that, you know, the people who voted for Trump, they just don't know what they've done. You know, they don't realize how badly they've hurt themselves. And so it's not a concern for others that you're seeing with this. It's an expression of ego. That they are smarter than all of these people. And as always, when you're a slave to your ego, it's always somebody else's fault. You know, and therefore, they cannot see their own errors, their own mistakes. You know, if you are open up to being wrong, you're more than likely going to end up right once in a while. But these guys have been wrong for 8 years. They've been wrong for 8 years because they can't let go of their ego.
It all seemed to happen in an instant, like a carefully timed comedy surprise. 1 minute, late night felt predictable and calm, almost on autopilot. Then Gutfeld dropped in out of nowhere, described by some as a hyper raccoon with a microphone and a mission. That over-the-top image fits perfectly, capturing the wild, unfiltered energy he injected into a space that had grown a little too safe, a little too settled, and maybe far too comfortable.
Kimmel cries about cancel culture. Kennedy, in a recent interview, Jimmy Kimmel blames liberal cancel culture, of all things, and their perpetual manufactured outrage for helping get Trump reelected. He specifically talked about their attacks on comedians. Tonight, Jimmy Kimmel fought back tears while falsely claiming Donald Trump attacked L.A. firefighters, prompting the L.A. Fire Department to attach a hose to Jimmy's face.
Suddenly, the polite, back-patting chatter that had come to define late night was blown apart by Gutfeld's style. He didn't just criticize, he went in with punchlines blazing, turning it into something that felt almost surgical in public. This wasn't a casual roast of Jimmy. To many watching, it looked like a full-force launch, powered by raw sarcasm, sending shockwaves through the industry and leaving behind some very uncomfortable silence.
True, it was a terrible night for women, children, and for the hundreds of thousands of hard-working immigrants who cut his lawn.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hard-working immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare.
But this nonstop comedic attack wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment blow-up. To really get it, you have to look at who it was aimed at. Long before the emotional speeches and serious political appeals, there was a very different Jimmy. Many people still remember his earlier days as the bold co-host of The Man Show, a loud, anything-goes spectacle filled with beer-chugging, bikini-clad women on trampolines, and a brand of humor that lived right on the edge, constantly pushing and testing the limits of good taste.
Terrible night for everyone who voted against him, and guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
You know what? If I ever cry on TV, it'll be because Maroon 5 put out a new song. But that's it. You big. Now.
It was a time of raw, unapologetic, and often intentionally crude entertainment, a far cry from the image we see today. Fast forward to now, and the contrast feels impossible to ignore. The version of Jimmy Kimmel on screen today often wraps himself in soft, polished monologues, delivering emotional speeches on climate issues or political outrage, aiming to play the role of America's moral compass. Watching this dramatic shift, Greg Gutfeld didn't see growth or a noble evolution. He saw a glitch. To him, this wasn't a natural change, but a system error, a sharp turn that triggered a nationwide eye roll. In his view, it wasn't just a rebrand, it was something far more damaging.
Phrase was at the end when Kimmel said, "You just don't realize it." Because you see, he's smarter than you, and he needs you to know that. And his ego can't bear that there's someone out there more famous and more influential than him. I got news for you, Kimmel. The last time you mattered, Bruce Jenner still had a piece.
At the heart of Gutfeld's criticism of Kimmel is a claim that's simple but cutting. Kimmel, he says, has walked away from being a comedian. In Gutfeld's blunt view, Kimmel has traded in the jester's role for that of a political messenger, serving a specific agenda instead of delivering laughs for everyone. That argument hits even harder when Gutfeld talks about Kimmel's interviews, suggesting they've turned into guided performances where guests are fed safe, pre-approved talking points, and the audience is gently steered toward correct opinions, rather than being invited into real, challenging, and honest conversation.
Dana, I'll start with you. It was a terrible night for women. Trump won more women. He won the popular vote. What are these people moaning about?
I don't know. I mean, today Brian Stelter tweeted that there was a talent agent who told him that a lot of members of the media are questioning whether they have it in them to cover another Trump cycle. And then they wonder why the working class is like, guys, you are so out of touch with what real work is. And also, they didn't really cover the Biden administration. They didn't cover the border.
This move away from comedic balance and real pushback, Gutfeld argues, left a noticeable hole in the late-night world. And into that empty space, he stepped himself, almost by accident, turning into a ratings force simply by doing what others wouldn't, choosing jokes over sermons. While some comedians leaned into partisan preaching, Gutfeld leaned into broad punchlines. Looking deeper, he also offers a psychological take on Jimmy Kimmel's shift and his current style. In Gutfeld's view, it all comes down to ego, an oversized one that blocks self-reflection and makes it nearly impossible for Kimmel to consider or ever admit that he might be wrong.
Oh, I have a few names to add. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, the town crier. All outlets ignoring Biden's revolving door of gaps. His constant forgetfulness, weird rambling speeches being let off stage. All the while you told us there's nothing to see here. Meanwhile, any parent can see this face means you got to change a diaper.
That ego, Gutfeld suggests, shows up in Kimmel's often condescending tone, especially toward viewers who don't share his exact worldview. There's a subtle but steady message in the delivery that some people just don't get it or don't understand how badly they've misjudged things. It's a tone Gutfeld quickly zeroes in on. He paints Kimmel as trapped by his own ego, arguing that this is why he's been publicly wrong for years, because he can't let go of that inflated self-image. In this framing, nothing is ever his fault. Real self-reflection never happens, and the result is a cycle of obvious contradictions playing out in public.
So these fellows are experiencing deep mental pain. And it's not just them. Journalists are now offering tips to deal with their disappointment, frustration, even fear. And I get it. That's normal after any loss. I'm still mad about losing world's sexiest man to Johnny Depp. But why would people feel fear? Maybe because their only news sources are constantly telling them Trump's going to turn America into Germany. But you know who felt actual fear during the Biden administration? People who had to ride the subway.
With the focus of a seasoned prosecutor grilling a reluctant witness, Gutfeld then rolled out what he called Kimmel's Hypocrisy highlight reel. It was a carefully chosen lineup of old clips that clashed sharply, almost absurdly, with Kimmel's current moral high ground and public lectures. Gutfeld happily reminded viewers of Kimmel's early days, packed with edgy and sometimes outright offensive bits that would spark instant outrage if aired today. Front and center was the infamous sketch where Kimmel appeared in blackface while impersonating NBA star Karl Malone, presented as clear evidence of the huge gap between who Kimmel was then and who he now claims to be.
If you're open up to being wrong, you're more than likely going to end up right once in a while. But these guys have been wrong for 8 years. They've been wrong for 8 years because they can't let go of their egos. It's true in the media. It's actually, it's true among the never Trumper Republicans. If you look at the sourpusses, it's an internal emotional feeling that why him, Trump, and not me? Whether it's like, I don't know, Bill Kristol or Jonah Goldberg. It's like, these are guys that were generally normal. And then their egos just kind of like, they just took it hard.
Beyond the history lessons and old clips, Kimmel's habit of tearing up on national TV became a prime target for Gutfeld's nonstop mockery. Gutfeld didn't treat those moments as sincere emotion, but as staged performances, carefully timed, a little awkward, and meant to hit for maximum effect rather than real feeling. The jokes peaked with lines like comparing Kimmel's crying to a toddler at nap time, only with less dignity. A jab so sharp it was said to chill his ratings. Gutfeld went on to paint Kimmel's show as more TED Talk than comedy, like a self-help podcast without the help or the audience. His most memorable image stuck hard. Kimmel as a Prius with a megaphone, quiet, smug, broadcasting moral superiority, but useless in an actual race for relevance. While Kimmel was delivering tear-soaked speeches and serious appeals, a louder, rowdier shift was taking shape in late night. Ratings began to reflect it, with Gutfeld's show gaining momentum and often overtaking Kimmel's long-running program. Gutfeld's reason was simple. He skipped the Hollywood-approved formula and focused on jokes. As traditional late night grew stale, his offbeat, unapologetic style stood out, suggesting that real, unfiltered humor might be the rebellion audiences were waiting for, and that he was its unlikely leader.